Good morning, everyone. Wow, a full house for Feminist Scenographies. Woo! Yeah, the house rooms 330 people. So just to give you an idea how many people are here. So we are on 300, surely, maybe 300 plus. Thank you very much for coming. If this is your first time at PQ Talks, PQ Talks is wonderfully curated by Barbara Příhodová, who is wonderful. Thank you very much, Barbara. Who is the moderator? I'm Pavel Drábek. I'm supporting as the second moderator of this event, and I have the wonderful honor to, as a white male, middle-aged, to a cis male, to be introducing a wonderful panel on feminist scenographies. I'll hand over to Shauna Jansen, who will be taking you through the three wonderful talks that we have from Marcela, from Harry and Shauna. After 30 minutes or 35 minutes, we'll open the floor to questions, and Teresa and Charles will be here with microphones, so we'll take questions, and I will always decide who takes the question. I'll then ask you please to introduce yourselves briefly, and we have roughly an hour for the whole joy. Feminist Scenographies, Shauna Jansen, over to you.
Good morning, on the cusp of the afternoon. Wow, it's really wonderful you're all here, and kind of nerve-wracking at the same time. And I want to thank the team, Barbara, Pavel, for hosting us. Yes. So let's kick this off, because we don't have a lot of time, and we're looking forward to engaging with you more in the second half of the hour. So this is the Feminist Scenographies panel, and Hari and Marcella and I have been talking since 2021 about the different work we're doing with feminist purpose through scenography and across different geographies and platforms, and thinking about how to articulate and develop our approach to feminist practices in the built environment. Feminist approaches to scenography recount stories that do not fit neatly into theater and performance design discourses, pedagogies, and paradigms. So this panel explores how, through our own practices and our own pedagogies, how feminist scenography expresses itself in the built environments and across different urban geographies in practice, materials, processes, aesthetics, and pedagogies. I have to do this. So we're really coming to this panel, I think, with more questions than answers or solutions or ways of doing things. I feel like it's really more of a provocation. And I was joking with some friends of mine who were here 4 years ago about how I'm going to start off by saying something that I said 4 years ago, but to a much smaller audience. So I think it's okay that I can say this again, because I think it's important. So we know that there has been no lessening of violence and aggression against women, self-identified women, queer, and trans folk. The media regularly reports misogynist and racist crimes against women. In an era when world leaders are openly hateful towards women, the queer community, and people of color, justice seems distant. Massive global feminist movements are some powerful examples of organized feminist work that aims to not only raise awareness, but also to reshape the world along radically egalitarian and inclusive lines. So, one of the big questions for me is, how might scenography help to reshape our world radically egalitarian and inclusive lines? So we have posed some of these questions. What can a feminist lens bring to scenographic practices? Where, how, and how does feminist scenographies express itself in practice, materials, process, aesthetics, and pedagogies? What kinds of scenographies of desire emerge when we work through a feminist lens vis-a-vis embodied encounters with the built environment? How can a feminist approach to collaborative practices and poetic interventions disclose new ways of thinking about city spaces? And finally, how can decentralized female practices within urban space help to envision interconnections and mobilize public awareness? So that's a lot of questions. I don't think we'll get to answer them all, but we're looking forward to engaging with you about those and the things that are shared with you in the next probably 25 minutes. So that's all from me for now. I'm going to hand it over to Marcela to kick us off with your work. Thank you.
Well, hi everybody. My name is Marcela Teiza, and I'm supposed to bring this first. Okay, there we go. I hope it's okay that everybody will understand my English, so I will do my best to actually modulate. And here I go. In essence, all performances are acts of storytelling, in which scenography functions as a visual experiential one. How do we establish then a feminist approach to storytelling and thus to scenography? How we then tell the story of place and bodies, allowing a conversation between a space and us, creating a lived relationship? Perhaps this human imperative to tell stories is a need to reflect ourselves back to our world, to reflect our world back to us, and to try and make sense of our physical lived-in realities. Our storytelling is not the truth, but our truth. A truth that speaks to the gaps of hegemonic histories, paternalistic imperatives that silence the voice and the bodies of women. Women identifying bodies, aging bodies, disabled bodies, immigrant bodies, all types of bodies that are finding ways to tell, retell, and reclaim space to tell their stories, like this one. Can then feminist scenographies exist as a visual dramaturgy that functions not only as a production, but also as a process, as a relationship making? I believe that feminist scenography's dramaturgy is inherently political, is disruptive, and transformational. It is also desire and gender struggle, which are persistent irritants in Western theater. It is also the guerrilla performer architect that uses her own performing body to reshape the plastic spaces of her world and ask us to consider the possibility that feminist performance may, in fact, be a kind of living architectural practice. I'm exploring these ideas, my own desires, and my own embodiment in the scenographic collaborative project I have been working on during this last year, from the summer 2022 to the spring 2023, entitled In the Presence of Trees. In the Presence of Trees is a site-based performance that focused on creating a dialogue between the trees, the performance space, the audience, and the performers. This project was created in conjunction with JDPP, Justice Dance Performance Project, which is an arts non-profit organization that harnesses creative expressions as a catalyst for positive change. It has 3 distinctive programs: Bridging Boundaries, Arts Intervention, a program that helps incarcerated individuals and their families reconnect and regain communication skills through arts; Moving Matters, a model that brings collaborative dance-based multi-art residents into elementary and high schools; and JDPP Ensemble, that enriches public dialogue and awareness of social justice through dance-based multi-art performances that examine contemporary social issues. It's with JDPP Ensemble that I did a series of 4 live interventions and site interaction through the themes of relationship between humans, performers and audience, and non-humans, trees and the land where they're placed, to enhance, or hopefully, to enhance our understanding of how to live in a world where agency is given not only to us, humans, but all living things, by practicing, listening, and being present. A full female ensemble of choreographers and scenographers embarked in this process. The ensemble is composed by dancers from age ranging 18 to 70. I said 70, not the other way around. With different life experiences, nationalities, beliefs, and educations. Women immigrants, students, mothers and grandmothers, professors, community leaders, and previously incarcerated women. Our process was of give and take, of proposing and collectively editing, of exploring sites in different seasons, of proposing ideas and letting the space conditions dictate the outcome. Elements like poison ivy, seasonal precipitation and temperatures, community participation, illnesses and availabilities, in addition to the usual budget and space restrictions, permeated our outcome and rehearsals. The locations were Bushnell Park in the city of Hartford in the summer, and in the slide you will see some of the community partnership of each of the projects that I'm not going to name. The Farmington River Park in the city of Bloomfield in the fall. Kinney Park in the city of Hartford in the winter, and Bushnell Park in the city of Hartford in the spring, completing then the full circle. I may have skipped that. There you go. Now I go to the next slide. During our performance process, I kept asking, how does a feminist scenography's aesthetic functions? How is developed? Again, many questions we keep having. In this case, we utilize a collective performance-making model, horizontal model, as a point of entry. Can then feminist scenographies be aesthetically grounded in the fundamental belief that artistic practice and critical reflection can spark change, political, community-based, as well as personal? I found that this kind of scenography is both creative and critical. Thus, by a collective dialogue, like this conversation that we are hopefully having here today, we can document the challenges, the goals, the triumphs of feminist stories, engaging female identifying bodies. I take in a space, this space, to allow us to reimagine ourselves through the lens of scenographic storytelling. I will explain the summer version of In the Presence of Trees in a more detail, and then I will let some slides run more quickly in the other sections. Hopefully, you will get the sense of the type of project that we were doing. In this slide, we see a map of the park situated in the heart of Hartford, the capital of the state of Connecticut in the USA, where I happen to live close by. A park that is situated by the Capitol building. Performers in the slide are marked with a cross and the audience with dots, just for reference. The park in which we rehearsed and eventually invited audience to move with us by occupying underutilized areas of the park and reestablish a connection between them, us, and the trees themselves. Here, the design elements, such as ropes, function as roots in which we visually materialize the connection that exists between living things. The Capitol as the background in the front of which dancer bodies and objects told not only a story of not only a story, but inadvertently referred to a particular history of the area, now readdressed by the specific bodies of these dancers. In the Presence of Trees fall at the Farmington River Park, and this is the video that maybe will work. Yeah, it's supposed to be this one, but I don't see a video. Yeah, no, it's okay. It was that video, but no, this is not the right video. It's okay, we can skip it. It's fine. Oh gosh, thank God for... Now, please all tilt your heads. It's an interactive performance. Okay, now it's okay. Okay. I'm gonna let it run because I was calculating that I did not have it, so I don't have anything to say at the moment. Okay, that's it. This location was in a state park with trails and hikes. We entered following the rhythm of a drum as a heartbeat led by a Sukiyak Native American woman named Kiki that brought us and the audience in the walk. You can see in the slides how performers were in different areas among the walk and allowing the audience to encounter them as you will encounter nature when you are actually walking in the space. Moving in and out, seeing details and experience the park on its totality, to eventually share space together and finalizing with invitation to all involved to plant seeds and trees together. This was the first event organized in the park after having been officially declared one. The performance allowed for the establishing of a community of neighbors around the newly formed organization, Trees for Bloomfield Initiative, that hopefully maintain and fund its tree planting program. The performance functioned as a community-making rehearsal for a call to action. The winter performance at Kinney Park was done in conjunction with Ebony Horsewomen. This organization is an urban writing center in Hartford that serves their communities, youth, families, adults, and veterans through equine assist therapy. With them in location and the public library sponsorship, we developed a film about the area that was brought to the community in a screening in which we invited the audience to share, to know, and to care about their own public areas. As an ensemble, we build strategies of creation making that are a structured process of collective creation among dancers, choreographer, space, community, and scenographer. A non-invasive way to communicate values and complex tacit knowledges, and thus hoping to establish a relationship, a conversation. In this context, our collective processes is an opportunity where each of us came as we were and brought our own particularities to the group. The rehearsal process was used to collect, create materials, and build relationships among us and with the place. It is rooted in the tradition of collaborative and generative systems. Each participant starts sharing a story. The three share one and the place another. Each dancer and scenographer will continue the stories to their own bodies. The place will establish a relationship between performers and objects, trees, between performers and space, land, and possible audience locations. Between the everyday, between the everyday use of the park, the rehearsal time, and the actual performance that became a moment within the continuum process of creation and not a culmination. Feminist actions can become processes of care, processing the urban and the public space that can bring us hope and reinforce the collaborative endeavor of performance making, bringing performers, audience, objects, and place into relationships. Feminist scenographies are embodied practices that can establish horizontal relationships between place, space, and community by telling and retelling our own truth. They can eventually provoke change by irritating the system. Feminist scenographies are inherently political in nature and can reclaim the way in which we understand and shape the public space, our own bodies, and communities towards a feminist and sustainable future. Thank you.
So thank you, Marcella, for this. And we are all very happy to be here, three of us, I think, and seeing you all here. My name is Harry Marini, and I'm teaching at the Ionian University in Corfu, in Greece. So I will start, my presentation with some more questions, actually. To think about. So basically, I'm going to talk about my practical work in here and some concepts that underpin my practice-based work. So I would like to think the following questions. What can feminist practices reveal in relation to urban spaces, processes, and collective action at this moment in time? How can participatory feminist actions act as a way of broadening the meaning of shared space and intervening in inventing new narratives? What can poetic artistic interventions can communicate about the tension between hope and despair? So in order to explore these questions, I would like to focus on the following 5 key elements which are related to my work, and investigate how they are connected to feminist actions. So I'm thinking of feminist actions and processes, feminist actions and cityscapes, feminist actions and collaboration, feminist actions and hope, feminist actions and care. In order to explore some of these aspects, I would like to introduce first my artist collective, which is called Part Suspended, and with whom I have been working since 2006. Part Suspended is particularly interested in feminist work that focuses on issues emerging from personal and collective experience, domestic actions, the poetic text, social spaces, and architecture. We employ a range of performance practices such as physical work, devising, writing, video, and sound work. And this has been presented in a variety of forms, such as live performances, installations, exhibitions, publications, participatory workshops. Our projects are often multilingual, so to remain inclusive and expand language boundaries, multidisciplinary in order to encourage a creative dialogue between fields of study, and multimedia so as to explore the intersection between performance as a place and time-bound event and technology. Our work has been presented to a variety of venues and festivals in the UK, Spain, Greece, Serbia, and Czech Republic. The core members of the Part Suspended collective is Noelia Diaz Viseto, Barbara Bridges, Georgia Karlogeropoulou, and me. And all of us, we are artists and researchers at the same time. So I'm interested in, departing from conventional qualitative and quantitative models of research, and I like to embrace practice as research strategies and creative practice that shapes and informs research. Practice is a critical part of research and depends and deepens connections and alternative pathways of inquiry. Since late 20th century, practice as research has become a significant paradigm through controversial, of conducting research, and was introduced in the academic setting. So according to Buzz Kershaw, the practice then was characterized by post-binary commitment to activity rather than structure, process rather than fixity, action rather than representation, collectiveness rather than individualism, reflexivity rather than self-consciousness, and more. Although methods of creative inquiry have shaken established scholarly research approaches, the way that knowledge through practice is produced and the value of it are still somehow in dispute. Reflecting on the binary position between practice and theory that has proved that challenging within academic studies, Dwight Congerwood explains that the way that knowledge is organized in the academy mainly supports a distant perspective, knowing that and knowing about, rather than another way of knowing that is grounded active and hands-on participation, and it has a personal connection. So knowing how and knowing who. In my practice-based work with Part Suspended, I seek to explore ways of practicing and researching eschewing traditional strategies and narratives. In our group work, we are positioning ourselves within the matter explored through the performance means. Our personal responses and embodied experience are part of the process itself and feeds into the research. In our work, as in other similar creative processes that seek non-traditional, non-hierarchical structures, the process itself is a significant part of the creative journey. Collectiveness and multiplicity of voices and actions contribute to the production of creative strategies rather than a fixed methodology that applies to all projects to any participant. And in here, I would like to focus on the ongoing project Spirals, which is created by the collective and is a multidisciplinary project. I would start it in 2013 and is still going, that embraces a variety of art forms, poetry, video, sound, walking, performance interventions, live actions, collage, workshops, and has been filmed and performed in a variety of settings and cities in Europe and beyond. For Spiral projects, the collective has collaborated with contemporary female creators, poets, performers, musicians, video makers, and has created video work based on the symbol of a spiral and female poetry. The filming has been taking place in a variety of spaces and countries, such as in London, in a leftover concrete area in Hackney Marshes, in a former industrial complex textile factory, Can Batlló in Barcelona, Spain, the seashore alongside the load-bearing wall in Broadstairs, a ruined open-air theatre in the center of Athens, in Greece, the ruin of Coventry Cathedral in the UK, the backyard of Kulturni Center in Belgrade, Serbia, and many other places. So our intention is to unite women's voices beyond geographical borders and generate space for dialogue and artistic interventions from a female perspective. Due to the interdisciplinary nature and the nature of the actual project, there are many ways to analyze it. But here I would like to focus briefly for a moment to the cities, to the spaces in the cities. So cities can be seen as spaces of diversity and tolerance and progressiveness and inventiveness. However, they can produce, the city spaces are neither produced or used through gender or neutral practices. They can be spaces of control, alienation, inequality, rigidness, discrimination, and fear. A way of challenging the demarcations and definitions of built spaces and prevailing narratives of architecture is to detach space from concepts of stasis and closure and embrace notions of heterogeneity and liveness. Here, Massey's proposition to consider space has always been made and always, therefore, in a sense, unfinished, offers us a way of imagining and acting in space differently. It offers great potential for action. It introduces space not as a container of predetermined actions and relations, but as a sphere that includes practices and processes. And as Massey would put it, what is needed, I think, is to uproot space from the constellation of concepts in which it has so unquestionably so often been embedded stasis, closure, representation, and to settle it among another set of ideas, heterogeneity, relationality, cohesiveness, liveness, indeed, where it releases a more challenging political space. Sorry, I just need to see how it goes. Okay. So in a feminist performance that relates to space, bodies, practices, and processes, acts as a way of challenging gendered narratives of spaces and patriarchal canons of architecture. So as Kim Solga suggests, Here you can see some of the poems and the spaces that we have created, spirals. Sorry, I'm just running this. So as Kim Solga suggests, feminist performance can operate as a lens through which we may understand how architecture shapes its corporeal objects and how they might be reshaped through the interactive work of bodies in performance. And Marcela talked a little bit about the bodies, and bodies are common ground between performance and architecture. I would like just to skip this through and say that we have been working with different materials. Here's a video. You can watch this video online. We work with different materials depending on the space that we're working and depending on the poem. So the performers have to invent their own materials based on the poetry work that we have been exploring each time. And we have run exhibitions and live performances based on that in performance spaces, exhibition spaces. And we run also workshops with the public. Just to finish up, just want to say a couple of things about all this phase that we all went through, the pandemic, and this has changed a lot our working processes. As you can imagine, everything had to happen online. But we did continue meeting each other once per week, and we try to, first of all, start thinking about the meaning of care and how we care for each other. So this became quite central to our work during the pandemic. And I would like here to mention briefly Lois Weaver, who is a professor of contemporary performance at Queen Mary, University of London, and co-founder of Split Bridges, whose work is very much about care. She has done amazing projects based on that. And just listen to her voice for a minute. So care has become a central component to my practice, performance and research in recent years, made necessary in part by age as I approach my 70s, by the aftermath of stroke in case of my performance partner, Peggy Shaw, and by the need to respond to hierarchies, systems, and global events that render caring a radical act. We created a couple of more work during the pandemic. You can see some of them. One was called Turning Points, the other was called Breath. You can watch them online as well. And to finish up, just want to say, we were thinking how this uncertainty, the way that all the feelings that we went through the pandemic could actually form a hope for us, through the cracks of the uncertainty, have some kind of hope that springs up. So let's think about what Rebecca Solnit claims: hope locates itself in the premises of that we don't know what will happen, and that in the spaciousness of uncertainty, you recognize that you may be able to influence the outcomes, you alone or you in concert with a few dozen or several million others. Hope is an embrace of the unknown and the unknowable, an alternative to the uncertainty of both optimists and pessimists. And I will finish up just to say, we were thinking of how to open up the project during the pandemic and embrace more artists coming together and work with us. So we invited 22 artists, 22 or 21, I can't remember, artists, and we devised a piece of work. We gave them some prompts, and they had to respond to these three main categories: spirals, time, memory, home; spiral, space, city, ecology; spiral, self, desire, dreams. And we got quite interesting responses and very nice discussions with them afterwards. So you can see some of this is coming from India, and some other works that came through. So they could respond in drawing, in video work, in sound work, writing poems, whatever they wished. And we ran some workshops as well. So these are from the workshops. and we ran a performance later in Corfu based on this experience. And I would like just to finish saying that through my practical work with the Part Suspended group, I want to suggest the possibility of alternatives. I want to question certainties, fixed structures, preconceptions, and binaries. Thus, feminist actions or performance can become a site of exchanging and sharing, where hope and care can spring from fragments of stories so far and allow us to imagine stories to come. And this is a nice quote from Jen, Luke, Nancy. There is no meaning if meaning is not shared, and not because there would be an ultimate or first signification that all beings have in common, but because meaning is itself the sharing of being. Thank you very much.
Okay, to wrap up the presentational part of this panel, I'm going to just share a little bit about a project that I actually did start sharing 4 years ago. But you know, feminism, it's an iterative practice. So I'm from Montreal, and actually when Trump was elected in 2016, this project started. I work with a collective of women. It changes depending on who's around, energies that we have, and we've done. We started something called the Feminist City Light Capers. And it's what we do is we perform site-responsive scenographic actions in different locations of the city in Montreal at night. And what distinguishes our practice from other urban interventions that many of us do is our intent to collaborate through creative action with light at night. We undertake our actions in urban locations that members of the capers, the Feminist City Light Capers, desire to temporarily occupy or pass through, but would not normally do so after hours. Montreal locations have included a bridge, a tunnel, and a mountain in the middle of the city. For us, desiring the dark is a critical mode of shared spatial practice. I'll just go here. Actually, I'm skipping. Together, we enact scenographic gestures whereby the dark of night is transformed from a site of gendered risk into a site of collective feminist creative agency. By temporarily transforming urban darkness, we joyfully demand our right to a space and a time that is always already policed. We challenge the heteronormative spatial and temporal logics that coerce women to stay home, stay safe, to minimize their exposure to nighttime risk. Feminist City Light Capers emerged also in response to the question of how urban safety is negotiated across bodily experience, how the night has a different geography depending on one's physical embodiment, which includes gender, race, class, mobility, age, and orientation. In our Feminist City Light Caper initiative, we actively engage the ambivalence that urban darkness raises for us, restaging nocturnal landscapes through temporary renegade lighting, through performance and play. With the light capers, urban atmospheres of lightness and darkness provide us with a useful framework for literally taking action and intervening within topographies of darkness and heteronormative structures of power in built environments. And importantly, as it relates to our work with a feminist scenographic framework or feminist purpose, drawing here from performance theorist Rebecca Schneider, who's argued how historically scenography has also provided a deeply gendered way of seeing. And she writes, the institution of perspective actually theatricalized the field of vision, creating scenographic space in which all that is given to be seen is, in a sense, a stage for the viewer, laid out before him like his own future, the scene became spectacle, an always already theatrical masquerade, a parade of desire, a dreamscape of wishes spread for potential consumption. This view of the scenographic world as a dreamscape that exists to be consumed explicitly or implicitly for a male subject, a gendered male body, is one that evokes feminist writing about the city. And Elizabeth Wilson, for example, has also questioned the figure of the flaneur as one that has abundant scopic and spatial rights to the city, as seen for his own pleasure, as setting for his dérive. What, she asks, about the female flaneuse? Does she have the same rights, access, pleasures, and freedoms? Just gonna skip ahead here. So I'm just gonna talk about one particular site we worked in. This is not that site, but just to say that a lot of our engagement in this work has often foregrounded themes of gendered access and public memory in the city. And I'm just gonna skip here to this site in Montreal. It's a formerly working class post-industrial neighborhood. And so our research explores the spatial gendered histories of darkness and safety in these sites where our capers take place. So this is Point St. Charles in Montreal, and the Point, as it is known, has a remarkable history of community activism, much of it led by women, who began to organize the dual context of deindustrialization and second wave feminism in the 1970s. So in other sites we've worked in, we've kind of, when we started, we were choosing sites based on our own embodied experiences and knowledge of the city. But in this neighborhood, we chose to respond to the initiative of working class women activists to transform an aspect of their nocturnal urban landscape. So one of the many interventions of the women in the neighborhood was with the the Shearer Tunnel. It's a notorious site that is still the subject of online discussion today. Well, maybe not, I haven't checked in the last year or so, but a couple of years ago. And so for the hundreds of women who worked at the Bell Telecom company on the other side of the tracks, the tunnel was a shortcut to work. But it was also dangerous. And in addition to its rather grim appearance, smell, and perpetual darkness, the tunnel was known to be a place where many men lay await for women and girls. Here are some comments made in response to an image of the tunnel posted by a member of a private Facebook group. And as you can see, the spatial experiences and memories of the respondents break down in a very binary way between male and female commentators. So like the other initiatives of the Point Action Committee, the traces of women's spatial activism, this feminist heritage is largely invisible today. A small detour sign on the north side of the tunnel is the only hint to this feminist spatial victory, because it's closed. So this became one of our sites. So armed with so in terms of like materials and aesthetics and exploring the scenographic kind of performance of materials, we were wearing emergency blankets, and we carry reflective materials. And in this case, we also brought a portable projector where we took a bunch of archival images and texts and were projecting them on the tunnel. It was a very rainy, windy night, but we went out. We had the need to go out. So in a way, I think we're trying to talk back to that history. We don't have an audience. We don't invite a public to these things. We go out on our own to enact a kind of temporary commemoration, a performative kind of heritage strategy. And as we were concluding our play with the light on one side of the tunnel, the door of an adjacent house opened, warm light spilling out onto the sidewalk around us. And a figure in that doorway called out, asking what we were doing. And we said we were making art. And then she laughed. And then after a brief pause, asked us, "Do you need more light?" We do need more light, but not just any light. I think I'm going to end it there, because we have 15 minutes to engage with you. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Shona. Thank you very much, Marcela. And thank you very much, Harry, for your fantastic talks about the project spanning many countries. We have time for questions, about 14.5 minutes of questions. So could we have the light into the audience? I hope that Teresa and Charles are ready. Okay, so there are lots of questions. I can see there's a hand up here in the fourth row. Teresa, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the amazing talk. I have a question for all of you, actually, because we all talked a lot about space and how you have practiced in particular space and how you try to re-narrative and claim the space. And I just want to ask, why do you think it's so important for you to use particular space and particular material as your media for your feminist practice? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Do either of you want to? I mean, what I could say quickly is that I've always had a site-based practice as well as my collaborators. So what informs, I think, the choice of a site is sometimes, as I said, like our own kind of embodied knowledge of the city. I mean, one of the places that I didn't show you that we did one of our first interventions was on a bridge, a pedestrian and bike path that has no lighting, and it's actually a path that I would like to, that I take between work and home. But as I was doing that and realizing like, oh, I shouldn't really walk here maybe at night so much, or, I mean, so that was kind of my embodied experience of saying, let's go there and play and do that collectively. Whereas the project, the site I was just showing you, that was actually a response to the spatial histories of women's activism in a neighborhood, because we also, do a lot of work with the archives and community engagement. I know that a lot of that didn't come out, but a lot of my work in site starts from actually understanding what was here before me. And I think with the light theme, we wanted to bring all our fairy lights and find the most reflective things we could and make them into the things we wanted to make them into, even little capes, to kind of, as silly as that might be, it actually brought a lot of joy to our, the short time that we would spend in those sites. So it's all, that for me is related to the theme of light. And also questions of like, what is it, the politics of making things visible? Like that's not always necessary either, yeah.
Is this on? Yeah. So I think that in this particular project, in my case, I also have had a history of base work, but in this particular case, because we were working with communities and we were working with a specific space, with a specific need to reach in particular places, the location was in a way dictated by which communities wanted to participate with us, which communities are inviting us, so then we will have the buy-in of the community. At the same time, that made them public enough that the passerby and the one who actually is not there for the performance or for the rehearsals, which actually was the most exciting part of the projects, being there weekly in spaces that are not meant to be performed, and all the interactions that we got with the humans who actually use it during the day. It created a complete, the choice of places had to do with community engagement in this particular case in the project that I presented.
Yeah. Great. I think in our case, similar to what Marcela just said, we are very much interested in where the poets, where is the home of where do they live, the actual poets. So we try to go and film in their in their city, and this is one part. And the second part is that we are interested in ruin spaces in general, because I think they are quite interesting performatively, and not only performatively, but also what is the function of the ruin spaces within the city. There's a lot of discussion about ruin spaces and abandoned spaces and how we reactivate them, and what is, as Shona said, what is the history of this place beforehand, and how we can imagine it in other terms, in new ways. And I will leave it here for, I think.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Thank you very much for the answers. Any more questions? And if I could ask you to introduce yourself. Oh, there is a hand up, Charles, up about 10 to 12 rows. The person who's standing up, thank you.
Hello, so Shona, we know each other. I have a question, like, it's Cassandra, hello. So I have a question, like, I come from urban studies and theater, and I have the same kind of research. And I have the same kind of reflection on the city and how it's made by men, for men, most of the time, not all the time. So do you have a plan on how to share your research with urban planners, the one deciding for the city? Because it's cool that we are doing this work, but how do we bring this work elsewhere to make a change?
I don't know if this is going to answer directly, but one of the things that was really exciting about the project that we did over this whole year is all like who we actually were able to get in the table to actually find the spaces and the communities. We got, for instance, grants from forestry grants, which never have granted theater ever. And we start to have communities and government officials invited to those conversations. So even though it was not talking directly with the planners, we made an indent in places where normally theater and performance is not even considered. And I thought it was really exciting, actually. Thank you for the question.
Okay, thank you very much. We have time for some more questions. Oh, yeah, so first the hand up, then yourself.
Hello, I'm so glad to hear your amazing talks, and I major in social science, and we are studying people people with different backgrounds, but we only research about them. But I'm so glad to hear that you let the public to see them like females and other from different backgrounds. So I was wondering, is there any inspirations or potential inspirations for your actions to other vulnerable public like transgenders or other vulnerable parts of the society? So I was wondering, is there any implications or inspirations or potential inspirations for them?
Thank you for your question. Well, you know, to be perfectly honest, a lot of this work emerged and then the pandemic happened, and we're all, you know, it's still here. And we're, you know, I think for me, I want to come back into thinking a lot about pedagogy in this work, right? And I would love to be able to reach out to other communities to do this kind of work, or I guess build that collectivity, but that also takes time in terms of like, what does the community need? So there's a part of my research that is highly community engaged and not specific to this feminist scenographies work that takes years to build. And so for me, ethically, it's kind of a question of ethics too, in terms of like, what are the steps that I would take that would be an invitation, and what is the need? I don't want to impose the work that I'm doing in this, you know, again, we don't really have a large audience, but I think what I'm thinking about in terms of the research and pedagogy, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying, Cassandra, I mean, I'm a horrible solutionist. I'm actually not. I don't want to waste my time on convincing the city that I have an interesting idea that's going to make this part of the city great if they put these lights here. I don't, although I think it's important to have some kind of other impact, but I'm not really in the place with this particular project of thinking, what is the larger social impact? But in terms of being as an educator, it's really important to me to create a space and hold a space of engagement where we can explore and do that research and making and see what younger people can, people studying in scenography and design can bring into their practice in terms of thinking about social transformation or making socially engaged art. And one of the things that I work with a lot of, I supervise a lot of urban design planning students, and I think this kind of just bring it back to kind of the scenography and the performance design. And for urban planners and designers in my, geography, planning, and environment, to be thinking through the lens of scenography and performance in their practice, I think can be very, very rich, and also, kind of vice versa. So I don't know if that's really answering your question, but I'm highly aware that I don't like to go into communities and kind of say, we should all do this together, and this is somehow going to improve something or hold memory in a different way. So I haven't quite taken this, we haven't, as a collective, the Feminist Light Capers haven't taken the work into community in a formal way.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the question. We have a question.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name's Rachel Han. I want to offer a provocation to you, and it's partly kind of mixing Kim Solger's idea of the performer architect, as well as that provocation from Rebecca Schneider about how perspective has been patriarchalized, to think of a kind of an adjective of it. But I'm just thinking about ways in which we might move past that idea of the perspective, as I think really beautifully, not beautifully, but really concisely articulated by the concept of the flaneur, and of freedoms of space and of desire, and just being able to roam a city with no sense of risk in that regard. And you talked about gendered risk as well. I wonder if the idea of atmospherics might be a way to complicate that notion of perspective, where, for instance, there's this concept in cultural geography of settler atmospherics, which is all about settler colonialism and how the histories and legacies of colonialism are rendered as felt atmospherics that blend emotional, historical feelings, as well as very material spaces, and who's allowed to have permission to act in certain ways in certain spaces. I wonder if there's also, within that context, patriarchal atmospherics that are felt and rendered in these spaces, and that by recharging them, because they're already charged through a kind of mixture of capitalism, colonialism, and patriarchal concepts, that these spaces are charged already in those contexts, and then maybe in the body architect or the performer architect notion, that kind of complicates, irritates, allows us to see maybe the mechanisms of these atmospherics, and realizing that these atmospherics are not without possibility of change, and seeing those mechanisms. I just wanted to offer that kind of patriarchal atmospherics.
Thanks, Rachel. Great.
Microphone.
Can I?
No.
Yeah, that was really great. I just want to say just one thing. Many people are asking, for example, why spirals? Why? Why is this shape? Why? So I don't know. This was in my mind for ages, actually. But when I started looking up about it, looking up stuff and reading about it, I went back to Le Corbusier's the angle and the straight line, and how the man is efficient if it goes from one point of the space to the other in the most straight way, effective way. And I started thinking, how you can actually reactivate another way of creating pathways in the city, and thinking about the roundness of things, thinking about a different way of building, of inhabiting, of moving around the city. And also, there is something also about something that is a transient action, an ephemeral action. So okay, you leave traces on the floor, wherever you are, wherever you do the action, but it's not that you actually build something. So it's there just for the moment. It may disappear, it may become something else, someone else might create their own spiral, they dissolve it and they make something different. So there are these two key elements for me that I'm dealing with, the shape or the theme of the actual project, and I still think that there is a lot of things to be done, because there are these patriarchal atmospherics around us all over the place, and we need to start thinking how to move, at least in our minds, in a different way. I don't know if this will be realized or materialized somehow later on, but at least, think about a poetic gesture that is not going through the traditional, way of dealing with the city.
Thank you very much. I'm aware of time, and there is so many more questions, so many more topics. I would like to ask you to thank our three wonderful speakers, Shona, Jansen, Harry Marini, and Artem Oteiza.